only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning.
Welcome to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast, where prepping doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. Coming to you from a well-defended off-grid compound high in the mountains. Coming to you from his Florida room in Richmond, Virginia. Neither off-grid nor well-defended, unless you count as chickens and cats. Here is your host, Keith.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. My name is Keith, and this is episode 22. Today is November the 7th, Monday, 2022. A lot to get into. I was going to record this and post this last night on Sunday evening, but I had a lot going around the home, a lot of picking up leaves, and that time change. If you live in the part of the world, which is most of you, that didn't make any sense. We all live in one part of the world. If you live in a part of the world that does not have to set their clocks back in the fall or forward in the spring, consider yourself very lucky. It is a complete pain in the butt. It's now getting light earlier and dark sooner. I never could quite figure it out. There's parts of the country, parts of the U.S., they don't do that. And politicians for years have been saying, well, we're going to vote. Vote? You need to vote on whether or not we need to mess with our clocks. I just don't get it. So fall has officially arrived in Central Virginia. I picked up leaves Friday night, woke up Saturday, and it was like I didn't touch the yard. A couple hours on Saturday, woke up Sunday, and I'm like, is this Groundhog's Day? Did I not just pick up these leaves? Did it again Sunday, came home from work today, went outside to let the chickens out, and I'm like, gracious, I don't know where all these leaves are coming from. I look up in the trees, and I'm like, there's not that many leaves, but had a bunch of stuff to do around the house this weekend, and as well as last night, and I wanted to get caught up on the news cycle because it is election eve here in the United States. Tomorrow, November the 8th, is the midterm elections that will decide if the Republicans will gain a majority in the Senate and the same with the House of Representatives. So it appears what they call a red wave. It appears that a red wave and the Republicans will have a commanding majority in both the House and the Senate. But crazier things have happened. If you have followed any elections, 2016, 2020, and now 2022, it's going to happen again in 2024. And I think it all started way back when. Was it Bush 41 and is that Al Gore in Florida, the hanging chads and all the lawsuits, and oh, what a headache. Last several election cycles, it's just silliness. Claims of voter suppression, voter fraud. Basically, it's been mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, and both sides, Republican, Democrats, and they're wasting no time in saying that the other side is doing something wrong, they're cheating, what have you. So regardless of your political affiliation, or maybe you don't have a political affiliation, if you are of voting age, go ahead and go out tomorrow and vote. The old adage, you can't bitch about politics unless you went out and voted. So if you vote and your guy wins, that's great, or gal. If you vote and your guy loses or gal loses, you can complain. But if you don't go out and vote, you can't complain because you should have gone out and voted and had your say. I really think that especially in some of the more densely populated urban areas, In the event that some of these Democrat candidates either lose their seats or are not elected to these seats, that unfortunately we're going to see some widespread civil unrest, which is a different word for riots. If you lived here in the United States and you followed the summer of love in 2020 after the George Floyd death, his murder, hundreds of millions of dollars of property was destroyed, burned, looted. Hundreds and hundreds of people were seriously injured, and numerous deaths as well. I certainly don't think that Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe into Thursday, there is going to be anything of that magnitude. But, again, regardless of your political affiliation, if you live in a densely populated urban type setting, I would suggest you go out and vote tomorrow, and then you go home and lock your door and sit in front of the TV or your computer and watch the election results. Don't go out there and get caught up in a bunch of nonsense and end up getting yourself arrested, hurt, or both. Moving on to international news. Over the weekend, Iran launched a rocket carrying a satellite into space, a very small satellite compared to other satellites. And I quote, "It was placed in space for peaceful purposes only." Let that sink in. Iran, who chants death to the U.S., death to Israel, death to pretty much everybody else, they want you to believe that they put a satellite up there for peaceful purposes only. So there's that. Iran has also finally admitted that the drones that the suicide drones that are going after the infrastructure in Ukraine, they finally admitted something we already knew. Those were Iranian drawings. So the Iranian drawings that they sold to Russia were attacking the infrastructure, water treatment, power plants, and that sort of thing. So the drawings that were used in these attacks are Iranian. We knew this weeks ago. They finally admitted to that, but they said, hey, we sold these drawings to Russia months before the war. It just happens. Hey, Vlad calls up the Ayatollah Khomeini. Hey, Ayatollah, I'm feeling like we need some drones. And he's like, luck would have it, I have about 200 drones sitting here in a warehouse. What are you going to use them for? Oh, I don't know. I just kind of like to have a bunch of suicide drones on hand in case maybe I invade a neighboring country in the next few months. November 4th, South Korea scrambled 80 jet fighters in response to what they said was 100 North Korean planes flying around in the general area, but those planes stayed in North Korea. So obviously Russia and China are supplying those planes to North Korea. They don't exactly have a cutting edge Air Force, but I actually didn't look up the type of planes that they were flying around. I assume it's something between what the Wright brothers flew and maybe an old F-14 or something like that. I don't know. But 180 of them. I mean, that's not too bad. So there are some military exercises going on in the area, joint exercises between the U.S. and North Korea. North Korea launched a bunch of ballistic missiles, several in 1 week. Well, we'll show you, Mr. War Game playing people. We're going to launch some missiles and fly some planes. So again, it's just posturing. The U.S. also scrambled a bunch of jets to intercept some Russian bombers. I'm not sure if they're the Tupolev 25, the Bear bombers. They're still flying. Anyway, this happens all the time. They fly within, 20 miles of staying within international airspace. They try to skirt that 12-mile limit. And our fighters go up there and they get next to each other and they probably yell at each other and flip each other off and fly around being silly. And that happens a lot. Like I said before, Ukraine is saying that approximately 40% of their infrastructure has been destroyed. Day 257 in the Russian-Ukrainian war, and the U.S. government has just sent over another couple bajillion dollars to help that. Diesel. Remember when I talked about a potential diesel shortage last week? So here is the real scoop on that. According to Lori Weaver Hawkins of the AAA, she says the country currently has about a 25-day supply of diesel. But she says that has been conveniently misinterpreted by a lot of outlets, media outlets. We have a 25-day supply. 20. I keep wanting to say 20. We have a 20-day supply of diesel here in the United States. That does not mean that we're going to run out of diesel in 20 days, if that makes sense. So by saying we have a supply of 20 days of diesel does not mean we're going to run out in 20 days. That supply is constantly refreshed, refurbished, replenished. I can't think of another synonym for that. So anyway, in the event that there is a diesel shortage, we talked about that in the last podcast. Now, that has not kept a bunch of people from going out and binge purchasing diesel, causing some isolated disruptions in certain areas, but nothing too crazy. And the average price of diesel in the United States is $5.53 a gallon. A few weeks ago, we talked about the potential rail strike and how some of the unions voted to ratify the particular agreement. So 7 of the 12 have voted in support, but all 12 need to ratify it to keep a strike from happening. There was also a rumor last week about a potential airline strike, but that has basically turned into a big nothing burger. The CEO of Delta Airlines has come out saying that there is not a chance that there is going to be a pilot strike, an airline strike, in the upcoming next several weeks. People are always saying, "Oh my gosh, a strike, a pilot strike right before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving," which is obviously the worst time of the year for airline pilots to go on strike. It's also the time of the year that airlines make a ton of money by jacking up their fares. My families jump on a plane to go see grandma and grandpa. So I doubt seriously if they're going to do that. Well, that's all the good news that I have. Really, the world is descending into chaos. All these different things going on. North Korea, South Korea, China being a big knucklehead, ticking everybody off. We got Russia, Ukraine, we got the elections. There is just so much stuff going on. And I've spoken about this before. It's not a single event that's going to cause, a poop hits the fan type of scenario. It's always the accumulative effect. So with the elections tomorrow, there's going to be civil unrest, in my opinion, depending on the outcome. That has the potential of screwing other things up. With everything going on, especially politically here in the United States, and I know, folks, I try so hard to stay away from politics, and I try to stay kind of in the middle of the road and give some information and let you all figure it out on your own. But there is such a strong intersection between politics and current events that it's almost impossible to talk about the elections, which are political in nature. Well, we got to go to, so we talk about the price of fuel. Okay, the price of fuel, still about $3.55 here in Central Virginia. Automatically, politics gets interjected. And again, like I've said before, it makes no difference whose fault it is that gas is $3.55 a gallon. Me pointing fingers at the Republicans or the Democrats doesn't get the price down and doesn't save me a few dollars getting to work. Talk about supply chain issues. There is a lot of that stuff that is within our control. There is a lot of stuff that is not. So when it comes to the price of gas, there is nothing that I personally can do other than limit my driving to help save money. I can't make the price of gas go down. And neither can anybody listening to this podcast. Now, I do have a lot of folks in D.C. that listen to this podcast. I doubt if any of you folks in D.C. have the ability of lowering the price of gas, but in the event that you do, myself and the other people that listen to this podcast would greatly appreciate you guys doing something. If not, put in a good word for us. Let's give these people a break. Let's get the price of gas a little more affordable. All right, one more thing about the price of gas, and then I'll move on. I heard the other day that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the however many 20 million, billion, jillion gallons that were released from the Strategic Reserve in July of this year, was sold to China. Call me crazy, but when I spoke about food shortages several podcasts ago, we have enough corn, grain, and all the other fruits and vegetables to feed everybody in this country 20 times over. But in the interest of capitalism, that food goes to the highest bidder. And I get that to an extent. Businesses are in the business to make money. So that's why that stuff gets sold to the highest bidder. So all of that oil that was released was sold, most of it was sold to China. Now dig this. I think I heard this person correctly. That oil is then sold back to us to be refined. I'm like, wait a second. This makes absolutely no sense. But I guess that's capitalism at its finest. I'm not really sure. I was under the impression that the release of all that oil from the strategic reserve was going directly to the refineries. Like someone said, hey, I'm releasing 10 million barrels of oil from the reserve. You guys in the refinery business, come get it and make it into gas. And then let's lower the price, a few cents a gallon. Silly me. That's not happening. Okay. On the prepping front, I want to talk about having a plan for power, having a plan for electricity. So here are some of your options. In the event the power goes out, and let's just talk severe storm, hurricane. Speaking of hurricane, there is a tropical storm, I forget, Nicole, really? Tropical storm Nicole is putzing around. It's still several days from the coast of Florida, but it appears that it might strengthen a little bit and then make landfall southern third of Florida. Not really sure if it's going to make hurricane strength or not, but great. That's all Florida needs is another hurricane or heavy storm hitting that state. They're just starting, not starting to recover. They put a really big dent in it in the last 3 weeks, but that's the last thing they need is more wind and rain. So we'll talk about, let's just say you're going to be without power for 5 days. You have the option, one of the options out there is a generator. There's those whole home generators or entire house generators. Generac comes to mind. I think that's the most noted name, most familiar name out there. You also have the ability of just the small portable generators. Those run on gas, propane, natural gas, but they all run on gas. Some run on gas and propane. Some gas, propane, natural gas. So you have your dual fuel, gas and propane, and then your tri-fuel, gas, propane, and natural gas. So when you look at a generator, if you have a portable generator, do you want that to power your entire home or just selected parts of your home? If you want to power your entire home, that is a very large, very expensive portable generator. If you want to power your lights at night or some lights at night, your fridge, freezer, hot water heater, coffee pot, microwave, that sort of thing, that is certainly possible. You have the ability of taking a portable generator and hooking it directly up to your residence, hooking it directly up to, I guess, your main electrical panel. When the power goes out, the grid power, you flip on this is a gas generator, and there's a thing called a transfer switch that basically locks out the power coming from the grid, and your house is now being fed, your panel's now being fed by this generator. It is super duper important always to have a transfer switch. Without a transfer switch, you could very easily what they call backfeed the grid. If you don't keep the power from leaving your house, it will certainly head back through the power lines and can cause serious injury or kill a lineman who's several hundred feet or several hundred yards working on your lines. You never want to backfeed the grid. So that's why they have the transfer switch. It isolates the grid power from your home. Generator kicks in, and you got your power going on. You can have that set up automatically. There's auto transfer switches, or you can do it manually. Your whole home generators and some of your fancier portable generators, it has an auto start. So when it detects grid power loss, transfer switch, the gas or propane powered portable generator kicks on, and there might be a delay of a few seconds. So if your cable modem, the lights might flicker, the lights might go out, but in very short order, everything will be back up running. And the cool thing about having it directly tied to your panel at home, or you can certainly have a bunch of extension cords running all over the place, coming through the windows and stuff like that. But, aesthetically it may not look good, but, at least you've got power. The thing about that is you need to prioritize, during the day, your fridge, your freezer. At night, obviously your lights. You're not going to be, using the generator to turn on any lights during the day. You have your flashlights, that sort of thing. And you want to make sure you have plenty of gas to power that generator. Always make sure it's in a well-ventilated area. You do not put a generator in your living room. You want it outside, preferably chained and locked to a very sturdy tree or deck, because those will be stolen during power outage and grid down situations. So give that a rest. Make sure you got plenty of gas for it. It's useless if you don't have the gas to run the generator. When you look at purchasing a generator, be very, very careful and be mindful of the wattage. You'll see a generator 9,500 watts. And if you don't know much about electricity or generators, which is kind of like me, you're like 9,500, if anything, that's a lot. Well, it might be, but you need to understand that the first number is the starting wattage. Major appliances, fridge, freezer, microwave, vacuum cleaners, they require a very high burst of energy to start. So the 9,500 in this case is the starting wattage. So if you have something hooked up to your main panel at home and everything is on, if you have more than 9,500 watts that goes towards starting things like your air conditioner, fridge and freezer, the microwave, the coffee pot, very more than likely you're going to trip a breaker and the generator's not going to start, or you're going to flip a breaker in your panel. So be very mindful of what you're going to use when. Now, the second number is always lower than your starting wattage. That's the running wattage. That, in this case, let's say 7,500. So at 9,500 starting wattage, 7,500 running wattage. So 7,500 watts is the amount of pull of watts you can put onto that generator at any single one time. So when it's running, that's how much power it can put out. 7,500 is quite a bit. Now, if you're running the microwave, the air conditioner, hot water heater, depending on how big those systems are, you could probably get close to 7,500. And they go up. There's like 20,000 watt generators. Those are super, super expensive. So a 20,000 watt starting might be a 17,000 or 16,000 running. Those things are monsters, and they are very, very heavy. You may not have to chain that one to a tree unless you've got, like the offensive line of the Chicago Bears roaming your neighborhood looking to pick up and steal people's generators. Solar generators are also a very good alternative to your gas or propane run generators. However, a solar generator can be charged either by the sun, hence the name solar. It can be charged by plugging it into the wall. But if the power goes down, the grid goes down, you are going to rely on your solar panels to charge that solar generator. You can also charge your solar generator with your gas or propane powered generator. Sounds kind of weird, but if you have a small, relatively quiet gas-powered generator, you can plug your solar generator into it. And your solar generator is just a big, huge battery that stores power. And there's all sorts of outlets. There's usually a 30 amp outlet. Some have 50 amp outlets. You can plug in a bunch of different extension cords. There's always USBs floating around. You want to charge your phones, laptops, that sort of thing. But the cool thing about the solar generator is obviously no fumes. It doesn't make any noise. And it gets a little warm. The fans will kick on. But the solar generator, and they're small. Some are super small, 2 or 3 pounds. Now, they're not going to power a lot. Those are basically for your laptops and your phones. And there's some monsters out there that are on wheels. The cool thing about it is there's no fumes. You can drag the solar generator into the living room, and you don't have to worry about the same situation you do with a gas-run generator. So there certainly is the benefits to that. Now, I guess pound for pound, your solar generators are going to be a little more expensive. Now, you can't go out and buy a solar generator, just the generator itself that's going to run your air conditioner. Now, you can piggyback and hook up additional batteries to that particular generator. And there's certain adapters, so it'll run 240 and that sort of thing. So some of the major manufacturers currently, you have Blue Eddy, Jackery, and EcoFlow. I have a healthy respect for electricity in that I was electrocuted when I was in college, trying to put up a ceiling fan in the room I was staying at in the fraternity. I was in room 1. I yelled down to somebody if they could flip the breaker for room 1 so it would isolate my room so I could put the ceiling fan up. They yelled back that they did it, and of course they didn't. And when I got on the chair and I grabbed the hot and the cold, that really hurt. Threw me across the room, and from that point on, I have a healthy respect for electricity. So I'm not the DIY guy. I'm not, when I put up like light fixtures, ceiling fans, I'm the guy that's really nervous and checked the breaker box like 10 times. So I'm not a DIY kind of guy when it comes to electricity. So that's why, you're going to pay a premium for it. You can always build your own battery backups, but that's not me. So I have several EcoFlow products. I've got the Delta Pro solar generator. I have an extra battery that goes with the EcoFlow Delta Pro. And I also recently purchased one of the newer products. It's the EcoFlow River 2. Now they have a River series. This is the River 2. And the big difference is the River 2 charges quicker than the River. Basically from 0 to 100% like in an hour and a half. That's either plugged into the wall or you've got it hooked up to a lot of solar panels. But again, the portability of a lot of these solar generators is fantastic. That's certainly the convenience. You grab it and you go, and it's going to, you can take a small solar panel, you go camping, you have the ability of charging your cell phones, running small appliances at your campsite, that sort of thing. And of course, then there's the larger ones. So I'm in the process now of putting together several high wattage solar panels, I guess you could say. I'm looking at maybe some 300, 320 watt solar panels and hooking maybe 4 or 5 of those up with the ability of charging the EcoFlow Delta Pro in, depending on the sun, and at a reasonable time. I keep them charged now just in the event something was to happen. And I mess with them, I play with them, I run different appliances on them, kind of take mental notes. How long will this run on this particular battery? You can look when you go to purchase a refrigerator, Home Depot or Lowe's, you see like the yellow sticker. This appliance costs X amount of dollars to run per year. And it shows, the running wattage. It's 150 watts when it's running. Let's say, the compressor kicks on for the freezer or the fridge. It's going to grab a little bit more. And then also the starting wattage. You need to keep that in mind because it needs that initial burst when it turns on. So just a lot to think about. But have something. Have even a small solar generator. If you don't want to go out. And talk about the gas generators. You can get small ones if you just want to keep a fridge and freezer running. You want to get the fridge and freezer running. And as long as you don't open the door, that stuff is going to stay cold for quite a long time. So run it for a couple hours, get it nice and cold. I don't know, unplug it, take it over, plug other things into it, and then grab the solar panels and take it outside if it's nice and sunny and charge her up. Or you have your small gas or propane powered generator. Of course, you have that out in the garage where it's well ventilated, or out on the deck. And you could run that as long as you need to. But make sure to give it a break every once in a while. If they get very, very hot, make sure you're checking the oil filter, all the regular scheduled maintenance, just like you would a lawnmower. All right, folks, I have gone a little bit long this evening. Didn't think it was going to be this long. Coming up on 35 minutes when I get this edited down. This is going to be a little over 30 minutes, I'm sure. But if you live here in the United States, make sure you go vote tomorrow. If you've already voted either absentee or mail-in ballot, good for you. I will be getting up extra early. My precinct is, I'm about a mile down the road, a big church down the road. I think the polls open at 6. I'll get there about 7. Get in line, get my I voted sticker, and then head on to work. Oh, don't forget, I'm back on the Twitter since Elon Musk took over Twitter. It's been very, very interesting. So I am back on the Twitter. You can look me up at, it's like @prep_podcast, or I guess the username or nickname, Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. You can find me there. I don't follow a lot of people. I don't do a lot of retweets and stuff like that. The people I do follow, I read their news feed just to get a different opinion. A lot of people that do home canning, long-term food storage, watch their feed to get some tips and tricks. And see if they're going to apply to my particular prep situation. So if you get a chance, find me on the Twitter. Follow me. What they say, I follow back. That's what everybody says. Follow me because I follow back. To me, it's not about the number of followers or blue checks or whatever kind of checks the Twitter has. It's just another way for me to look up information and see what other people are doing and adapt something that I like. And if there's something I don't, then I just completely ignore it. Anyway, folks, as always, be safe out there, take care of one another, and until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. While you're at it, help spread the word by leaving a rating and review.